George Kirkpatrick, Inspiration for the Nation, celebrating people we feel good about. The United Way of Central New York has asked all of you to take its 21-day racial equity challenge, which began this week. And guess what? There's still time for you to participate. And here to talk about that are two people who are very much involved in this process. Please be joined by Nancy Kern Eaton. She's the president and CEO of the United Way of Central New York, and Johanna Rogers, who is the vice president of racial equity and social impact. I got it right. As Centerstate CEO, and of course the host of the newly funded, congratulations,
Thank you.
series Behind the Woman. She is the Black Excellence and Equity recipient, as am I. And we're here to, by the way, congratulate. We're here to change the world. And actually, isn't that appropriate, right, for the conversations that we've been having? So Nancy, the challenge began this week. And tell us what the 21-day racial equity challenge is.
It is a program that we are proud to partner with almost 100 organizations and businesses in this community to offer. It began several years ago. Dr. Eddie Moore Jr., Debbie Irving created a way for people to be on a journey of self-awareness, discovery, learning. There's a theory that in order to develop a new habit or break a bad one, you have to do something for at least 21 days in a row. So they took that as a way to help people think about creating some new social justice habits, if you will. And so the 21-day Racial Equity Habit Building Challenge is a daily journey where we, using much of their content and also local content, will send an email each day to anybody who registers for this free site. And it's not too late to join us. And also, there's a resource page on the website that lists all of the curriculum each day as it passes. So you can do it at any time.
You can do it at any time, and also there's different ways you can do it, because some people like to hear stuff, some people like to read stuff, we learn in different ways. So what's really great about that is that there are different ways for you to absorb this work. But I think the most important thing is that you have to be willing to take the journey, and it's not comfortable for a lot of people, as we found out this week. We'll get to that as well with the debate. But let's talk, because you went through this already with your team, and let's unpack some of that discomfort and your own discomfort with this work.
Every person has bias, right? It's part of being a human being, whatever that is. And so I'm hopeful that everyone is always on a journey of learning and awareness. I have had the privilege of connecting with so many incredible people in my life, and especially in my career being in human services.
Sure.
And I learn all the time. And what I've learned, for example, working with people who've come here from other countries, I have learned so much from them about their life experiences that have really helped me think differently and look at the world differently. And I think that we've all seen the impacts of systems that simply don't allow every person the same opportunity to live the life that they choose. And so we did this as a team because we are committed to a mission of working to make it possible for every person to live the life they choose. And, obviously in my life, I'm a white person. And every moment of my life, I've been a white person, and I've benefited from the privilege that occurs in this country because I'm a white person. And so I think it's really important to acknowledge that, and also to learn about what I can do as an individual to make a difference, and also how we as United Way, and partnering with the YWCA, by the way, this was really launched in partnership first with the YW, Fannie, and then obviously so many more other partners. And growing and learning, I think sometimes can be uncomfortable, and yet what an incredible feeling to be more aware, and to be able to do things in a new way.
I want to get to some of what that discomfort was personally for you, because Nancy Kern Eaton, she's the head of the United Way. What discomfort might she have? But let me get Johanna Rogerson, because one of the things I asked Nancy was like, well, what about the business community? Because most of the people at this point, and in terms of our conversation, have been nonprofits. So Johanna, your very title is about this work. So let's talk about what that means to be the Vice President of Racial Equity and Social Impact of Centerstate CEO, and how the business community that in many ways controls the economic purse strings and their involvement and your personal involvement. So let's take it from two directions. Your personal involvement in terms of the work as the Vice President, but also how this permeates throughout the community.
Yeah, great question, George, and thank you for having me. I think what's really important as we've watched over the last several months, as we've all been home and sitting in front of our televisions, we haven't been able to turn a blind eye to what has been happening in the Black and African American community for generations, right? And so I look at my title and my position right now as investment in driving change and intentionally coming up with strategies to engage corporate, the business community, and our region specifically in initiative, strategy, training, and services that are going to help them find a way and avenue through some of these issues. Prior to this point, companies have taken it, at will. Some companies have been doing a fantastic job of trying to get staff trained and think about inclusive culture, what equity might look like. And there's some others that haven't had tools, don't know where to start. And what it is our board and the organization is asking us to do is to help people find ways to get started. And I think from a personal perspective, that is really personal work. My background is centered on race and equity work. That's what I did prior to coming to Syracuse. That's what my academic background is etched in. And so I've taken a personal commitment in each of the roles that I've played in this community, even as a board member with the United Way, right? And thinking about how do we create systems change? How do we bend justice a little bit closer to an equitable outcome for historically marginalized people like myself? And I take it as a personal challenge for me and a personal accountability measure because I am a woman of color, an African-American woman, a descendant of grandparents that migrated north looking for better opportunities, right? And so I know firsthand and have lived through what it's like on many levels of having access to something, even if you don't necessarily have the monetary or social class or entryways into certain spaces right away. How do we carve out those spaces? And my background in higher education and working with TRIO programs and Upward Bound, I spent a lot of years doing that in the collegiate space. And I'm happy to have the opportunity to think about ways to drive, especially in Central New York, how our business community can think more intentionally about creating those pathways.
Even the title that you have, I think says something, right? Because typically a title like that you have would be diversity, equity, inclusion, but you have it as racial equity and social impact. And so I'm sure that there was some discussion around even the title that you have and having it be different than what we would normally see. Talk to me.
Yeah, and the really interesting thing is I didn't necessarily come up with the title. But Rob Simpson, our president, brought it to me because he is serious about outcomes, metrics, and results.
Right.
How are we we can't just, an organization like Centerstate can't just have it in name.
Right.
Right. We have to have the intentional impact, the outcomes. Our board is looking for it. Rob is looking for it. And to be quite honest, despite what others may think, a lot of the staff want to be held accountable to figuring it out,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it was really important for us not to have the lines blurred. Sometimes when diversity, equity, and inclusion are used broadly, it's it is a great term to talk about all the ways we show up as different people, right? But there's something fundamentally and foundationally important when it comes to talking about the racialized experiences of
Mm-hmm.
our community
Mm-hmm.
and the historic ways race has predetermined what type of opportunities, access, and economic class you're going to be able to um, situate yourself in, right? And so we were intentional about using that name because we're intentional about driving outcomes that makes this community a more profitable one for all.
So we're talking with Nancy Kern Eaton. That was Johanna Rogers. She's the Director of Racial Equity and Social Impact at Centerstate CEO. Nancy Kern Eaton also joining us as the President and CEO of the United Way. We're talking about the 21-day Racial Equity and Habit Building Challenge, right? Because it takes 21 days. We know scientifically that it usually takes 21 days to build a habit, probably a day to break a habit, but to build a habit. But we want to build habits that will be long lasting in this community. And Nancy, I want to speak, you identified as a white person and walking in white skin privilege. So then talk to me about, even as an enlightened person, who believes in the equity and the work that obviously United Way funds work that is about building equity in the community. But talk about your own walk through this journey and any discomfort that you have, because I'm certain that a lot of people with white skin privilege will say, but I don't have that, right? That doesn't impact me, that doesn't affect me, and even get offended by the term white skin privilege or being anti-racist or doing anti-racist work. Johanna, you can get on this too, but Nancy, walk me through your own journey with that. And what do you say to people that are struggling around language and get stuck at that door?
Well, first of all, let me congratulate both of you for being selected by the Central New York Community Foundation. I'm honored to be on with you. And Dr. J, as those of us who love her and know and respect her well,
I hope I
is
said doctor when I
continually,
first introduced her.
I know, well,
I did,
but
I think.
yes, because Johanna is, we were very fortunate in this community when Johanna came here.
Hmm.
And it's incredible to see the impact she's had in such a short time. And, I think that, I'll be honest, growing up, I, I really thought my generation
Hmm.
would fix racism. Like, I honestly, naively believed no one my age could think somehow you would treat anyone differently
Post
because
civil
the
rights,
color of
correct?
their
Post civil
skin,
rights, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then as a preteen, when I heard someone my age say something racist, I remember that as a pivotal moment because it was sort of like, oh no, it can't be that we're not gonna change this.
Hmm. Hmm.
And and yet I knew so little truly about what I've learned and continue to learn. And I think for many people who identify as white, there's this notion sort of like, well, I'm not doing anything to harm people of color. Like, I'm not doing racist things.
Right.
And of course, that's not the point. It isn't about not doing racist things. It's about not even recognizing racist policies, not understanding what that means. I mean, I do think that many have written and spoken about white and people of color, about this notion in our country that it's sort of become this if you're a good person, you're not racist. And if you're a bad person, you're racist. Or
Right.
if you're
Right.
racist, you're a bad person, right? And of course, it's not about that. I mean, it's much more complicated. It is about the fact that I, as a white person, will never know what it's like to have people treat you differently when they see you. I mean, that's why people say you should do auditions of people or interviews without being able to see them, whatever, because there's that. Or you shouldn't even know their name because names even
Right,
have been
right.
proven.
And what's happened is people try to deny that those systems are in place, but then you have the studies that prove it otherwise, Nancy. So I think you're absolutely right about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we have data. I mean, some people sort of say, like, well, everyone has an opportunity. Well, the reality is we have data to show it's simply not true. And I think that I think we have to use data to impact people's minds, right?
Hmm.
Like for many of us, the fact that Syracuse has the highest concentration of people of color living in poverty
Right.
is
Well,
horrible, awful, and never what we want to have be true. And yet, how do we know what to do about that?
I know, Johanna, you have to go. So let me get you in on this last question for you before
Mm-hmm.
you step aside. And it's this. We heard this week the President of the United States, when asked directly to denounce white supremacy, and he was not able to do it. In fact, instead told and directly a white supremacist group to stand by and stand by essentially, right, and stand down. So, um, feeling that, and then and as a black woman in this country, as a person of color in this country, what and in the midst of this work of 21-day racial equity habit building challenge, how do you respond to that in the little bit time you have with us right now?
Yeah. Um, you know, George, the thing that I would say um, is that we're in an unbelievable time. I never would have, being a child of the late 80s, 90s, we look back on the civil rights movement kind of nostalgically, like it's something that happened. We see the black and white photos and we know it's something that occurred and you study it in your history books.
Hmm.
Um, but I feel like for me and my generation, and I've had a conversation with my peers, we can't believe in some regards the the moment that we're in because it seems like something out of a history book.
Hmm.
It seems like we've been here already. Um, and so it's in some ways like just unbelievable, but at the same time, so um so real, for lack of a better word. Like it's surreal. And as I engage on this work, I show up as a black woman that's a mother to a young African American male. I show up as someone who is committed to doing race and equity work, whether it's at Centerstate or beyond. And I go, if there isn't a moment for folks who have been on the fence, for folks who have um, turned a blind eye, because the journey, as Nancy pointed out, and I often use that term also, the journey to recognizing the racial realities of America is not an easy one to walk.
Hmm.
But for those that have been sitting by, this is the moment in time where I
Talk to
feel
me.
as if you have to get involved. It's no longer, I think, an option for folks just to stand on the sidelines. You're either in this to help us move the needle on what is viewed as systemic change, right? But also, it is our duty as a community to decide what values are going to be most important to us and how we are going to, from a Central New York standpoint, think about the future generations, right? Because we got to fix COVID now. We got to fix what's happening as a social movement now. Otherwise, I'm afraid to what we may see over the next 2 to 3 to 4 years if we don't really come together and work actively towards equitable change together. And if the conversations that are happening, not just this week, but over the last 100 years haven't convinced you of such, hopefully what's happening now will.
All right, Dr. Johanna Rogers, the Vice President of Racial Equity and Social Impact at Centerstate CEO. She's going to step out. I'm going to finish up with Nancy Kern Eaton. But Dr. Rogers, Johanna, thank you. And we'll look forward to a brand new season of Behind the Woman. Congratulations once again.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, George and Nancy, for having me. Have a good
Great
one.
to see you, Dr.
All right.
Day.
All right. So, Nancy, let's continue here. Johanna says if you're on the sidelines, it's time to step up. So, a lot of people in this community have stepped up. How many people have stepped up? How many companies have stepped up? Who's and it's at the time of this conversation. By the time people hear this, there could be even more, and that's why we're telling people that there's still time for them to sign up for this challenge as we talk today, the 4th of October on a Sunday. Go ahead.
Well, over 2,000 people are on this journey.
Yay!
And honestly, what we hope is that folks will do it with their families, with their faith groups and faith community, with their colleagues. We have, as I said, almost 100 businesses and organizations have promised, they've committed to encourage their employees to take this journey. The city, the county are partners, Centerstate. This is a powerful movement to invite everyone to become more aware so each of us can make decisions for ourselves. And I think that, you know, when we see that white residents of Onondaga County have a median income that is almost twice that of Black residents of Onondaga County, we have to say, that's not okay. That's not okay. And so by going on this journey, each of us can grow, each of us can become more aware. And then our hope is that it's the beginning for many people of next steps. And so as an organization, we are committed to working with others in thinking about what are the next steps for our community as well. As you mentioned, George, we have been proud to support programs that specifically work to address some of these disparities and to provide services that will help people get the education they need, have access to health care, all access to employment opportunities. We want everyone in our community to have the chance to build wealth, right? It's not just about surviving, it's about the opportunity to thrive. And so we're very proud to be a partner in this work as a community. And as a community, there's so much we can do.
I still didn't hear from you your own discomfort in this work and what you had to grow to learn.
You know, I'll share with you that I had a minister years ago when I was doing a lot of work in inner city neighborhoods, excuse me. And this minister said to me, if only you were African American, your voice could be heard in different ways. You would be able to do more. And in a way, and so what I said to him was, nothing I can do about that. And the reality is, for a long time, I've tried so hard to be a good ally. I think that's the right word, right, George?
Right.
And yet, I'm not a person of color. I have not lived this, and so. And I try hard when someone says, you know, a white person says to me, oh, we've come a long way. And my response is always, not really. Yeah. And now we've gone backwards. In so many ways, we've gone backwards. I mean, the heartache and the anger and the division, this isn't political. In my opinion, racism is not moral. That is simply the case. Yeah. So United Way does not get involved in politics, but this isn't political. This is morality.
Yeah.
And our mission is truly about making it possible for every person to live play, learn, work, grow, and thrive.
About 2 minutes left, Nancy. I know that this is United Way campaign season, and certainly United Way will certainly be impacted by COVID because of the nature of work. You know, many of us are working from home and we're not in our companies, and yet being at work and at our companies is the way that the campaigns are run. I know that the campaign also began this week, so you got a racial equity challenge and also the start of this campaign. What do you want to say to the community about the importance of, even in this time where people don't even have jobs, the importance of even still considering their support for United Way and what it means to this community? You have 2 minutes.
What, George, I appreciate that question. And what I would say to you is this. Since 1917, people in this community have understood that by investing together in one pool of funds, we could buy the most in terms of human services for local needs and local residents. And so now more than ever, we are ready and proud to support that vital network of local human services. So while we're part of a worldwide network, we're a local nonprofit organization. Our United Way board is local people. We determine what programs are funded here, and the money stays here. And we've been proud to be part of this community's response to the COVID crisis. I think that we could not have had better leadership from the county executive and his team and the mayor and his team. I've been in more meetings with Deputy Mayor Owens and then not many days go by when I am not in conversations, and the funding community has come together. So what I would say to folks who are listening, if you have the ability to give, we promise that we are all working together to fill the gaps. Sales tax revenue is how many of these vital human services are funded. The county executive has no choice but to make reductions. It's the last thing he wants to do. He doesn't have the money. It just simply isn't there. So we are working with the Community Foundation, Allen, Reisman, Snow, all the local, Gifford, to think about how can we best partner with government so that people in our community have help, and more people than ever need help.
Yeah. Nancy Kern Eaton is the president and the CEO of the United Way of Central New York. This is their campaign, so when that little envelope comes up around, if you can, please support them. But also go to unitedway-cny.org. We'll have the link for you. Start the 21-day equity challenge. And since it started on Thursday, there's still time for you to join, because all of the day's events is there and you can go back and catch up. Nancy, thank you so much. Continue good work in the community. And the big event is the culmination with Ibrahim X. Kendi, How to Be an Anti-Racist, on the 21st. That's coming up as well. Thank you, Nancy, so much. We're going to be, let's talk to you then when this is over. Inspiration for the Nation.